conflicts takes a lot less time than doing work. So that's kind of why I like to pull changes, do work, pull changes again, merge conflicts, test, check in. I'm going to say that a lot.
Yeah. Almost want to print it out and put it on our board as we're working.
Exactly. Conflict resolution. So we kind of talked about this a little bit. We'll throw the slide up. Binary assets cannot be resolved cleanly. It's not a text file. It's a bunch of bits, and your merge tools don't know what to do with this. You know, and it says, I don't know what this means versus this. But if it's serialized in a XML type format or a text format, then all of a sudden you have something where you can take a look at it. So in scenes, the order of your objects in a scene doesn't necessarily matter. So you can take a look at it with a merge tool, and you can see, oh, Voil's just added an axe, and I just added a sword, and they're both not marked active. So we can say, okay, it's fair enough to keep both those objects in there attached to the character. That's perfectly happy. So we're fine to go ahead and merge that. The meta files, if you don't split those off, you're going to have issues in your library folder. So make sure that you split those off. We can take a look at it and we can see that, oh, we both modified the import settings. You know, Foil said 75%, I said 50%. Well, now we can go and have a meeting during our stand-up, take a look at the board and say, hey, we really need to mark this at 60%. And then we can also talk about, should we modify the source asset or should we modify the import settings? What's the advantages and disadvantages of doing it either way? So really important stuff to make sure you split that off. So having these things serializable opens the opportunity for more discussion with your project.
Okay.
So again, the meta file, I mean, I can't stress this enough. This really should be mandatory to split this guy off. You know, let's assume asset 1, we just talked about this. Asset 1, source doubled in size by person 1, asset 1 halved inside, merge conflict in library. If you take the meta file from person 1, the asset is doubled in size. If you take it from person 2, asset remains the same size. Okay. So, you know, one thing to be aware of. And metafile strikes again, number 2. So scene 1 created by person 1, scene 2 modifications by person 2. If you don't split the metafile off, all of those are going to be stored in the same file in your library, and it's going to all be binary. You have no idea what you're actually doing. So you need to make sure you split those off so this doesn't happen to you. I was working on a 48-hour game jam, and one of my guys was building the title scene, and I was working on level 1. It was actually this project. This came out of a game jam. And, you know, in 48 hours, you're not thinking, I need to split the metafiles off. And we didn't. So what happened was at the end of the game jam, we went to merge our stuff together. And we broke the entire project, and we didn't make our entry on time. So, you know, lesson learned again, even on small 48-hour events where you're just trying to crank stuff out, I can't stress how important that is. The other important thing, excluded changes. You know, you're going to go and you're going to add a bunch of stuff, and it's not going to get picked up like you do on normal projects. You're not adding it to the project file. TFS works really well with standard .NET C# type projects, so it checks that .cs proj file. So you're going to see at the bottom when you perform a check-in that there might be detected 1,265 adds and 2 deletes. I'm pretty sure you can imagine what would happen to the project if I forgot to add those 1,265 adds. Somebody's not going to get whatever plugin I just installed. That looks pretty familiar of a plugin. You check in plugins, you're going to get a lot of adds and maybe a few deletes to tweak some things. So make sure that you go through those adds and you ignore the files that you need to ignore, and you can do all that straight from there. So you can right-click the file that needs to be ignored and ignore it. And then again, here's the plugin I checked in, Smooth Moves. We decided instead of rolling our own animation system, we'll buy one this time.
Okay.
So it doesn't check in DLLs automatically. So you'll have to go and manually add those like we did with the initial check-in. So if you forget to do that, somebody's going to download the code, and that's not going to be there. So make sure you go through and look for any sort of binaries that get added to your project, especially from plugins from the asset store. And that's about all I've got for this. We're a little over time, sorry about that. But we're going to take a meal break and be back in an hour. I really hope you enjoyed this section on ALM, there we go. Yeah, I kind of got brain dead there for a minute.
You can tell it's lunchtime already.
It's lunchtime. I need to get some coffee and some food, so I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, I'm David Crook. You can follow me at David Crook 1988 on Twitter. And again, this is Voiles.
I'm Dave Voiles. You can find me on Dave Voiles on Twitter. My name is my Twitter handle.
And thanks.
We'll see you in an hour.
Hello and welcome back to Module 8, Monetization and Marketing. Now it's time to learn how to actually make some money with those apps. I'm Tobiah Marks again, and with me today is Jason Fox. If you didn't catch yesterday, I am a game evangelist at Microsoft. I've been working here for about a year now. Before that, I ran my own indie companies for 4+ years, making mobile games on all platforms.
Yeah, and once again, I'm Jason Fox. I'm a technical evangelist at Microsoft. I focus on gaming, cloud, and client. I've got 13 years of industry experience doing games, data visualization, graphics, DirectX, and you can find me on Twitter, Jason G. Fox, or follow me on my blog, jasongfox.com.
Very cool. So now we actually want to know how you're going to make some money with games. It was coming up yesterday a lot in the chat. People say, how do I make money with this?
Yeah.
So let's go over what we're going to talk about. We're going to say, okay, what is an indie exactly, and how are those indies making money? We're going to go over App Store optimization, which is, if you don't know that term, you will know it by the end of this talk. That's my main goal, so we're going to cover that a lot. And we're going to talk about apps as a service industry and exactly what that means. So first off, how are indies doing it? What exactly is an indie anyway? People were asking about that in the chat before. Indie is independent developer. That means that you don't have any publisher behind you. You really don't have any safety net. You make a game, and if it fails, it was your money. You know, if you're a big AAA studio, you have some funding, you have some investors. If the game's not popular, you might not get hired for a second time, but you're still getting your original paycheck. Indies are kind of out there by themselves. That's a broad term. It could mean a hobbyist, someone who's working, you know, 1 or 2 man devs in their home. It could mean a small team, 20 people, self-funding, and everywhere in between. But that's okay, because these indies, they're able to do it. They're competing with big apps on the store today. This isn't just, you know, small side projects people are doing in their own time, you know, getting a couple little extra pocket change. These are #1 apps are indie made.
The way I define it is just somebody who is not contracted with a publisher to build a game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Publishers
and that's a huge scope of possibilities.
Mm-hmm. So these self-published games, these small studios, sometimes as small as 1 person or, you know, even just 2 people, are reaching the #1 slots in stores. They're making serious money, and they're competing with the big guys. They're competing with the AAA studios. They're not just competing relatively well. They're doing better than these guys that have sometimes $1 million budgets behind their game. So is it just luck?
What are some of these games? Can we...
Oh, I mean, like Threes is probably one I've been playing a lot lately. That's been super popular.
Angry Birds was an indie game.
Absolutely.
Right?
Minecraft is probably one of the biggest notable successes of all time, practically.
Yeah. Flappy Bird.
Yes, definitely.
For what that's worth. Yep.
You know, this isn't just, as I said, not, you know, 1 or 2 apps every now and then. It's very common to see indie apps top the charts. So those apps succeed not because, well, a bunch of apps release and somebody rolls the dice and they are lucky enough to be selected. there's a science behind which apps make it to the top of the stores, which apps make money, and which apps don't. Too many developers I see talk about, well, it's just luck. I made a game, this guy made a game, that guy's successful, I wasn't. It must have just been luck, right? Well, there's a reason why they stand out, and you can't just clone to succeed. Too many people say, well, Flappy Bird was successful, well, Angry Birds is successful, I'll just make a game like that, release it. Why wasn't mine successful? Well, that's already been done. It's already been seen. It's already been shown. You have to stand out. You have to be unique. If you search the store right now, you're going to find so many different Flappy Bird clones, or what's that helicopter game he just came out with? He came back after. It's already been cloned like a dozen times at this point.
I think they cloned it before he even published it.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're talking about here is not about, okay, we're going to do marketing, here's where you have to spend money. Here's where you buy ads to market. There's all these traditional marketing ways that just involve dollar spends. We're not saying, here's how to spend money on your app. We're talking about marketing with zero budget. We're talking about marketing with nothing and having similar levels of success to games that have those big advertising budgets. So how do you do that? Number one way, App Store optimization. Have you heard about this, Jason?
I have. Through several of your talks, actually.
Most developers I talk to, when they're first getting into the industry, they don't really pay attention to this. So App Store optimization means your presence in the App Store. Now, when I say App Store, I mean any App Store. This could be the Windows Store, it could be the Windows Phone Store, it could be the Xbox page, whatever gateway they have to get to your app. In a digital distribution age, no matter where they find out about your app, if they get recommended from a friend, if you're the number one in the charts, they just find you through search, they're always going to be funneled through this page. And that page will have your icon, your screenshots, and your description.
Now, do I need to optimize the same way for every store? Do the same general principles apply?
The same general principles apply. There might be some keywords that work better in one store versus another.
Okay.
But really, once you start thinking about this stuff, you're going to have a leg up on your competition in a big way. There's so many games out there that these developers will spend sometimes years of their lives working on it, perfecting it, making it better. And then when it comes to release, they have the intern write up a description in a day. They look at it, okay, that seems fine. Or for example, the icon. They'll take an icon, they'll make a really nice looking icon, they'll show it to their artist friends, they'll maybe show it to some focus groups, and they'll say, this looks great, and then they ship it. But it looks generic compared to other ones in a store. It's not a gaming example, but I like to use a to-do list as an example when I talk about this. So many to-do list apps out there have a checkbox for an icon.
So we're going to publish Zombie Pumpkin Slayer to the store. Mm-hmm. We need to have a really great icon.
Yeah, something like that, right? Yeah, but no, exactly. It needs to pop. So let's use it, actually, instead of my to-do list, let's use a zombie one. It's a great example. There's so many zombie games out there. If you have your zombie app as a picture of a zombie, and it might be a good-looking zombie, but if it's not going to stand out against all the other zombie apps, if I'm not going to look at a screen of not just your icon, but 50 other icons, and yours doesn't pop out at me, I'm not going to click it. I'm not going to be interested in it. It has to have that 10-foot test where I look at it from 10 feet away for half a second and know that is a good icon. That is interesting. That is cool.
Cool. Great.
Next is your screenshots. I have up here on the slide an example of Temple Run, which is a really great game. Most of you guys out there probably have played it, but even if you haven't, you can look at this screenshot and you know exactly what's going on in the game. It has a guy running. There's coins in a straight line. I can see there's room to the left and right where I can go and collect them. There's some enemies behind me chasing me, and it says swipe to turn, jump, and slide. Now, it's not giving me full instructions. It's not saying swipe up to jump and down to slide. I'm just getting the general idea. I can hold this in my hand if this were a phone. I can see my thumb moving back and forth. I know how this game feels. I know how it plays.
Yeah, that's a lot of information in that one screenshot to show you what that game's about and how you can have fun with it.
I mean, look at the water texture there, too. That's not a really good water texture, actually. That's kind of not the best, most pretty screenshot they could have picked. They could have very easily done this pre-rendered scene with the guy running into a temple, like Indiana Jones style, trying to grab his hat as he was sliding under a door. But they didn't. They used an actual screenshot from the game to show what the game's going to be like. Because if they had used that cooler screenshot, maybe some other people would have downloaded the game. But then they would have been not what they expected, because they didn't know what to expect. It was a third-person adventure game. You know, how does it play? And if it's not what they expected, it's not what they wanted, they'll uninstall it, or even worse, rate it badly. And that's going to hurt you in the App Store rankings. It's going to hurt you in the charts. It's going to hurt your monetization. So it's better that the only people who actually download your game are people who are actually going to be really engaged and want to play it. So you need to be as honest as possible. Even if honesty is not as pretty as you can make it, honest is more
Should I
important.
put a screenshot of my game menu?
No, really. I don't see why a menu is that important. Unless your game is about menus, you're some type of baseball management sim, you really don't need that menu. You need an example of what the gameplay is, and it's clear and concise in one image. Again, the Temple Run is a great example because it has all of the different elements of the game, and I know the nature of the game. I even implicitly know the goal of the game just in that one screenshot. And the more you can make it clear, and ideally in that first screenshot, the better chance you're going to get that the person who downloads it is someone who's going to be a player who will monetize well, who will stick to the game, who will like it, or even just download it in the first place just because they know what it is. Last thing I want to talk about is the words, the description. Again, people just ignore it. They think, okay, this is a cool game, it's got 30 levels, it's awesome. Well, 30 levels doesn't mean anything to me. Does that mean I'm going to play it in 30 minutes? Does it mean it's going to take me 5 years to be able to master? You have to have a little more context. You have to have a little more call to action as why your game stands out as unique, why it's better. But also it's got to have keywords because the first people who are going to read it are not humans. We'll talk more about that in the next slide.
Should I take the full write-up description of my game from my game design document and just paste it into my description? Is that a good idea?
Wordy is never a good thing. If your game design document is the one-page game design document, I've been to a lot of talks at GDC lately where they pitch, instead of having these big 500-page Bibles, if you can pitch your game in 1 page or less, okay, maybe then you can copy some of that in. But again, you have to think about the keyword optimization. That brings me to my point. Optimizing for search. How will they find you?
So like in Zombie Pumpkin Slayer, you just run around and you just slay pumpkins. Should I just put that in the description?
No, because there's so many games about zombies. Like you want to talk about zombies and pumpkins and all those things, right? But you have to have keywords of what the game actually is. Because remember I said, the first people to read the game is not a human. It's going to be a robot. It's going to be a search engine. Just like your Google, your Bing, whatever search engine you're using, they read the web first, and then when I'm on the store and I'm like, I want a zombie game, I'm going to search zombies smashing, or I'm going to search pumpkin kids game, and I'm going to find different keywords, and based on the search algorithm, whatever that may happen to be, whatever the magic sauce they use, they're going to figure out which games go up in that chart. And the higher you are in that search result, the more natural downloads you're going to get. So this isn't something that you can guess. This isn't something that you can write and in a vacuum say, this is good keywords. You have to do your research. You have to actually go to the store, look at other zombie games, look at other pumpkin games, look at other games in the type of category that you're in, and figure out, well, does this game stand out? What keywords are they using? What is the game that doesn't stand out? Rank 100, what words are they using? How frequently would they use a phrase like endless runner in the description? Did they use it once? Did they use it 3 times, emphasizing it? When you submit to the store, you can submit certain keywords. Say you're doing some kind of trivia game. You can submit trivia or family, or you could submit family trivia. So if I'm searching for family trivia, the person who has those 2 words together in their key phrase, they're going to go up the charts higher. But if you search for family, they'll still appear if you only have the family trivia keyword, not quite as high. So you have to figure out what's important for your game. What keywords are most likely what people will be searching for to find it. Not the name of the game necessarily, but someone randomly searching on the store.
Right. So if I make a Flappy Bird clone, should I just put Flappy Bird in there, even though it's maybe something else Flappy or some other?
Well, most app stores are kind of against the idea of you using another game's name in the title. So I would advise against that, but I would look at Flappy Bird. I would look at your competitions and look at how they describe their game and try to describe your game similarly, because if how people are finding Flappy Bird, if they don't necessarily remember the name Flappy Bird, or just simply if they're searching for it, if you have similar keywords, you will appear in similar search results. Now, this isn't permission to copy and paste. I'm not saying to, spam as many keywords as possible. Anyone have like a WordPress blog out there and it just gets comment spam after comment spam of 500 lines? a human is going to read this eventually. So you have to still be short, you have to still be punchy, you have to still have a call to action, but you have to also keep in mind these keywords and balance both of those when you're writing your description.
Great.
Next, let's talk about outmaneuvering your competition, which is really my fancy way of saying optimizing for your rank. Now, this part's kind of obvious, right? Like everyone wants to be a #1 app, but how exactly do you get to be #1? First, let's talk about how rank is determined. It could possibly, maybe, could be by some of these elements determined by downloads. Everyone knows that, right? Number of downloads is good, but that's not the only way it could be judged. It could be judged by the active installs. That's how many people currently have it on a device at any given moment in time. It could be judged by the velocity. That's how many downloads you're getting over a certain amount of time, a week, a day, whatever that happens to be. It could be the ratings, both the number of ratings and the quality of those ratings. I have a lot of different ratings, or I have a few very good ratings. And the usage. Doesn't help it if people have it on your phone and never use it, never open it, versus people who open the app every single day. That could go up the charts. Now, why did I say kinda, sorta, maybe? I don't actually know how the ranks are determined.
So the
wouldn't tell
stores
me.
don't publish what their algorithm is for determining rank.
No,
I've never seen this before.
no, that would be
You just have to
silly.
try to guess, right?
In fact, they actually change it up often just to try and keep people on their toes. It's as if, imagine if Bean released a press release and said, this is how we determine what the #1 website is. Every single website's just going to optimize for those specific things that they're searching for and just try and cheat the system to get #1. They try to make this a moving target so people can't cheat the system, so they can make the best game possible and have to optimize for all those different metrics in order to actually get up the charts. Because ideally, you shouldn't say, well, active installs is the only thing that matters. I can ignore every other metric as long as I have a good amount of active installs. That's not really good for the store. It's not good for the players. They have to change it up.
So help me out here, because my team, we're getting ready to publish Zombie Pumpkin Slayers to the store, and we want to maximize downloads. We want to have the most active installs. That's what you're telling me. So how do we do this? What are some good ways of doing this?
Well, there's always brute force. It has been, it's a tried and true method. You can have ads everywhere. You can buy ads. I'm sure you've seen some of the big mega games that spend literally millions of dollars on ads. Or for an example, in other medium, say you watch a new movie's coming out. You see a billboard of it. You see ads pre-roll before your Twitch videos. You see it on TV. And the theory of those ads is not that I see that billboard, I'm going to go watch that movie. It's I see that billboard, I see that pre-roll ad, I see that trailer before this other movie, and maybe that third or fourth time you see it, you think, well, maybe I might be interested in that, and then you actually go research that product, or you go want to see that movie, or you go download that app. And this has been proven by many studies, a lot of people who have marketing as their full-time degree that figure that out. And it definitely works, but it takes a lot of money to actually do that. It's not really practical to buy one billboard or one series of banner ads. So if you're only going to sink, just $1,000 into some click ads, probably not going to see very many results from it. So you have to be able to think creatively on how to optimize for those metrics. Now, I could talk for days, years, months on all different ways to think creatively. And bottom line, it really comes down to your game. Your game might have some better way to market than other games. Some games will do one thing which doesn't work for another way. You really have to think on a per game basis how to get this up, get this more popular. Those examples we were listing earlier had very different ways. Minecraft marketed very different than Flappy Bird, very different than Angry Birds. There isn't one universal formula. But they did keep in mind how they were going to get known. They did have a strategy. It wasn't just, well, we'll hope the community will market for us virally. They had some method.
So let's say that, we're going to release Zombie Pumpkin Slayer, but my friends are releasing another game. Can I cross-market with them?
Absolutely. Cross-promotion is a really good way to do it. I mean, if you don't know another indie developer, get in the chat and start introducing yourself to people, because there's so many developers out there who are in the same situation as you. And you guys are making games. It's a really great industry to be in because the competition kind of isn't really competition. If I'm making an app, if I'm making a to-do list, I'm making some calendar, I'm only going to have one to-do list, one calendar on my phone. So there's some real competition for that space. But a game, gamers play multiple games. If in your game you recommend your friend's game and vice versa, that player is just going to go to both. In my game, Blast Monkeys, when we were number one, we were cross-promoting with a game called Zoo Club. We were a physics-based puzzle game, and they were this management zoo tycoon game. So very different audiences, very different keywords. People were finding us in the stores very different ways. But in Blast Monkeys, there was a Zoo Club world, entire levels themed to it. And in the corner of every level of that world was a button that said, oh, go here to play Zoo Club. And in Zoo Club, you could get Blast Monkeys as an animal for your zoo. Theme matched perfectly, right?
Yeah.
As we were number one, they went to number 8. Because it wasn't just that we gave them players, but they were giving us players, and we both shot up the charts because of it.
So it's mutually beneficial.
Absolutely.
Great.
And this isn't just, oh, this is something that because you're a small indie you're going to do and you can't afford real advertisement. This is what Zynga does. This is Zynga's secret sauce. They may have a really big popular game, they make a new game, and then they market that in their existing game for free and get the equivalent of $1 million ad buys for free because they're marketing to their existing player base in their previous game. Cross-promotion is a really good technique to build up momentum. And the more friends that you can get together to do it, the better. And I wouldn't necessarily say, throw in a banner ad and you'll be good. Having that full integration is nice. Having some page that says, here's, games I recommend is nice. But again, exactly how you implement that has to be on a per game basis. You can't have a, Zoo Club world in every single game. It just worked really nicely for two friendly indie devs from the Bay Area who knew each other and had two animal-themed games.
Great.
Probably the number one thing that I would recommend, though, is preventing uninstalls. Too many people think it's just about downloads, just getting as many people to look at the game as possible. But if they're looking at the game and then immediately uninstall it, that really hurts your active install metric, and that matters a lot more than people think. So you want people to keep it on the phone as long as possible, because once they have it on the phone and then get rid of it, they're not going to keep playing it. And I know I say phone all the time because I talk mobile, that's where a lot of my experience comes from, but this is the exact same stuff if you're doing a PC game, doing a Windows Store game, doing an Xbox game, same logic applies. Once you have the game and then remove it, you're very unlikely to install it again. So how do you prevent it from being uninstalled? Number one way I found, keep the file size small. For phones specifically, if my phone is out of memory, which happens all the time, I go to my apps list, I sort by size, delete the top one. If your app is 2 gigabytes, it's going to get deleted first. I don't care how
that can
amazing
affect
it is.
downloads too, right? Because of the constraints that carriers put on download size.
Absolutely. There's I believe it's a 50 megabyte limit now. It might be been 25 for a while. I think they upped it. But if it's under a certain amount of size, you won't be able to download on a 3G connection. They'll need Wi-Fi. And too many people think, well, if I'm past 50 megabytes, it doesn't matter. But there's a big difference between even a gig and 1.5 gigs. Because the bigger you are, the more likely you're going to get uninstalled. And if you're really big, even if your game's awesome, even if I play it every single day, I'm going to remove it and get 10 other games from the store. Because those 10 might suck, but as a consumer, the new is always going to be more interested than the known. So for Blast Monkeys, we pride ourselves that every update we did, and we were updating every 2 weeks, every update we did for the first 6 months, we were adding content and made the file size smaller. I believe at our peak lowest, it was a 4 megabyte game, just to make it as tiny as possible. So when you look at that list of uninstalls, we were way at the bottom. Even speaking to the 3G download limit, if you're at 50 megabytes, a lot of games are in that 45 to 50 megabyte range because they optimize just enough to be under there. So if you're at 30, you're already under a significant amount of your competition, and you're just that much less likely to be uninstalled because people sort by size and delete whatever's on top of that list first.
And I'll just say that, this happens to me too. I'll go and I'll be mobile and I'll say, hey, this game looks really awesome. I want to download it. Oh, wait, I've got to wait for a Wi-Fi connection. Mm-hmm. So I forget about it. Sure, it downloads when I get home and my phone connects to Wi-Fi, but it could be days or weeks before I go back and revisit that game and notice that it's in my app list. So I just want to make that comment. That's something I've noticed before.
Yeah, absolutely. Next point I want to bring up is acquiring users intelligently. So whatever you do to get users, whether that's a traditional ad, whether that's these other cross-promotion ways, you have to figure out where those users are coming from and how long they're staying. You can't just get 1,000 users. An example I like to use is when you're doing ad buys, you can have analytics in your game to really know where that user came from and what their consumer lifetime value is. That is how much per average you earn per user. So you also figure out how much is cost per install. So if I spend $1,000 on an ad campaign, as an example, and I get 1,000 installs from that,